Hey, I'm Gina Hyena. This is Gina Got Friends. Today we are here with Alex Finance. Alex is one of my close friends. He's also my personal finance coach. He's got a lot to teach everybody about how to deal with their money that we've never learned. And he's just a cool person to talk to. And he's right here. What's up, Alex?
What's going on?
What up? So me and Alex know each other from working together. When did we start working together?
About 5 years ago.
Shit. It's been that long.
Corporate America.
Yeah. And then you started, when did you start Alex Finance?
As a business, I started about a year ago, last year, February.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And what prompted all of this?
So around the time I actually started working with you, I was the brokest I had ever been in my life.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Let's talk about it. So the scenario was I would pay all my bills and I'd probably have $70 left. So let's talk about what was eating up the checks. I had rent for the first time in my life. I had my own apartment. I had a car I should have never bought. I had credit cards that I didn't know how to leave at home, and other than that, I wasn't keeping track of anything.
What were you getting on them credit cards?
Oh man. It was my credit cards were funding a lifestyle.
Okay.
The drinks on me, the let me get a large, so the credit card was funding the lifestyle, and the credit card doesn't have a stop point. It doesn't, I had a decent limit. And when I say decent, more than I should have had, more than anybody should have entrusted me with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what made them think to do that, but now I see why. But yeah, it was a lot. I was living the dream, quote unquote, until there was no more dream.
Did you get anything tangible from those credit cards? I know it was a lot of going out because I remember going out when we first met, started working together, and I was like, Alex always got the party going on. Alex always got something going on.
If anything, it's a lot of good times, a lot of good memories, which you can't trade for.
You're like, I got a lot of good pictures out of it.
I have 7 days, 7 nights photos, and and I had some clothes to show for it. It's a lot of good memories, but I don't regret any of it per se, but because it was all a learning experience.
Oh, for sure.
But I had to feel the pains of.
What was it that first hit you that you're like, shit, I'm broke?
Man. Let's see. The first thing that really let me know I didn't have it. I went to my parents. And for me, looking back, it felt dramatic, but at the time, this was life. So the huge thing for me was, again, I got a check. I paid every bill I had to pay. I had next to no money. And I had an Infiniti coupe that I should have never bought.
Stop. I didn't know you had that car. When you said you bought a car you shouldn't have got, I'm like, what kind of camera you got pulling up? You're like, no.
I had a black Infiniti coupe. And
in New York City. So just to reiterate, we're in New York City right now.
So I thought I was up. But what I realized is there came a point where I did not have enough money to pay my car note and to pay my rent. I was literally trying to fight between the two. And as stupid as I was, I'm like, well, I'm not getting rid of this car, obviously. You're
like, everybody knows me from the car.
And that's what was so silly about it. It became a piece of me almost, what I mean? And I'm like, this.
It does make you feel some type of way, because when I first moved to Texas, I bought an Acura. And I remember you were not happy about that. I bought an Acura, and it makes you feel, especially when... on the low, you're kind of like, this might have been a little out of my price range, but you're like, look at me driving down the street.
Yeah, it's like you pay for that feeling, you know what I mean?
And nobody knows.
And you're the only one feeling it.
Yeah, for real.
You're the only one feeling it. I don't know why in your head you feel like the rest of the world is like, oh man, look at you doing. Well, you know what? You do get a little bit of that because, mind you, your friends, they'll acknowledge and try to encourage what they can see.
Yeah.
But they don't realize how little they can see.
Oh, absolutely. I remember, one of my friends, when I had that Acura, I would drive and I was like, man, I feel up because I moved from New York and I was driving a car and I was like, I want it to be like, when you walk around the street, people here notice your shoes or they notice your outfit or your bag. And there it's like people notice your car. And I do remember one of my girlfriends being like, she was watching my dog and she was like, hey, do you mind if I take your car somewhere? And I was like, God, no. Because I was like, if anything happens to that car,
my baby,
I was like, I am so sure. I'm like, I don't got the money to change the tires on.
Oh my goodness. So let alone could I barely afford the car when I got into it, I didn't think about maintenance. You know what I mean? Just the costs that come along. I didn't think about tickets. I didn't think about, and the funny thing is, what's the reason I wanted the car? To be lit. I wanted to take the car to where I envisioned the car being, which is where the people were. So now you're driving the car to a place to spend more money.
Yeah, and that's true.
When it all added up, I was living a lifestyle that I could not maintain. I could not do it.
Yeah.
It started to hurt.
Oh, bet. So yeah, going to your parents is always one that you're like, my tail is between my legs. Like, I just feel, I don't want anybody to know about this.
Bruh.
I'm not feeling like an adult right now at all.
And the funny thing is they gave me such logical advice that I was not trying to hear at the time. They're like, Alex, an apartment at that price in New York City is very difficult to come by. Just get rid of the car. You can always get another one. I'm looking at them like, get rid of the car.
I never. You're like, you're a different generation. You just don't
You don't
get it.
understand how I feel.
Our music videos are different now.
The music videos told me. Because mind you, it had a sunroof this big. But for me, it might as well have been a convertible. Because of how I felt. You know what I mean?
You're like, I'm feeling that sunshine.
A little bit of sun on the top of the baldy? Are you kidding me? It was a vibe. It was a vibe.
Meanwhile, you're like eating from the bodega every day.
And the funny thing about it is to get the car, it took me a year to save up the money for the down payment for the car. Now, I had to go through it from there because I'm like, I'm not spending I was working one part-time job at a furniture store. So I was not making much money.
Yeah.
But I was not thinking about the total cost of the car.
I'll move some couches.
I'm like, how much will it take me to get into this thing? You know what I mean? So
you're like, it'll all work itself out from there.
And it did not. And it did not. It did not.
That is such a horrible mindset that I've totally been in when I was younger too, that you're like, I'm just gonna get that and everything will work out after. Like, I know I can buy this, and then you're like, shit, and then you get hit with a bill and you're like,
yeah,
they're like, oh, everything's upside down now.
We have no idea what afford means most of the time.
No, and before we move on to that, I will say I thought about you today because I saw I was walking my dog and I was in the city, and I saw this Honda pulled up and it had all Gucci interior. Oh. And I'm like, you got Gucci interior on a Honda. And I'm like, wait, you gotta change your priorities. And I was like, or maybe you got it right because Hondas last 16 years. And you're like, well, I'm gonna feel stylish.
And that's the thing about it. It's
So I'm like, this guy's either got it all wrong or he's got it all right.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I was like, ooh.
Because those cars are tanks. They last forever. You get great value out of them. You know what I mean?
I was pissed. My dad made me get a Honda. When I saved money, I had 3 jobs working when I was younger. And I was like, I want a Mustang so bad. I wanted a Mustang so bad. I went to a comprehensive high school, so we had the auto part too. And so everybody always had souped up cars. Same thing. I bought an $800 stereo system. I'm like, why did I do that? I don't know where that thing is. It played CDs. It played burnt CDs.
You bought it so the streets could feel you.
Yeah. It had the video on the inside. It had little penguins that would swim by. She's sitting in a junkyard somewhere right now.
Yo,
it's so bad. But no, how you're talking about how people don't know what afford means. Go into that and tell us what you've learned, Alex. You're my guru.
So what does afford? So does afford mean you have the cash in your hand for an item? Does afford mean I have room on my credit card? Does afford mean I can give my last to have this item, therefore I can afford it?
Yeah.
Does afford mean swipe and think about it in whenever? You know what I mean? So I had to really think about that. For me, afford was if there's room on my credit card, it can be in my possession. I can afford it.
I think that's what a lot of people our age think too. Because I see a lot of people with some bags and I'm like, I know you don't make 6 figures. You're walking around with Louis.
It's tough,
what are you doing?
It's tough because what at one point used to be kind of status symbols has almost just joined in with what has become fashion. It used to be at a point if you had Louis Vuitton or Gucci, it's whoa. Yeah. This is a separator. That costs so much. Yeah. Everyone does it. But now, they cater more to our audience. Their price point is that, anybody with a job could get a piece of the action now. You know what I mean? So it definitely You know, and we still look at them as status symbols. It's hard to break away from that because when we were young, this is what living well looked like.
Right?
I realized that, you know what movie really did it for me? That I knew Louis Vuitton was like, this is it.
What?
Coming to America.
Oh, that's so true. That's so funny.
Because mind you, it's not often on film you see wealth depicted how they did it in that movie, especially around that time. He gets off the plane at the airport, 20 carts, Louis luggage stacked to the ceiling. And I didn't know the brand, but I'm
Nobody
like, if Prince Hakeem had it,
right?
if he got it, this is big money right here.
That's so true, because that wasn't even... Nobody knew what that shit was back in the day. Like nobody in our money class did. But then I remember being in high school and everybody had a fake one.
Yeah.
People would come to Canal Street where we're at and get a fake one, and they'd be like some shit that they don't even make. But people would walk around high school and they'd be like, "Yeah, my mom got it from this guy in Paris, steals some shit." They all came with a story.
I'm sure. I remember the thing at high school was they had a place in Harlem where people used to take like a regular pair of white Air Force Ones and you take them to this place and they'll put Gucci on it wherever you want.
Oh shit, really?
They'll put Gucci on the side, on the top, and people ran to the store.
That's so funny. There's a spot in my neighborhood that'll put red bottoms on your shoes. Whatever shoe you got, they'll put red bottoms on it.
I really had to come to a point where I asked myself, why did I want the items I wanted? Is because for me, I won't speak for anybody else but myself. I realized that I feel like those items gave me a confidence I feel like I didn't have unto myself.
Oh, it's fucked up because they really do.
Yeah.
Because you know how I am with the sneakers. I'm wearing Louis sneakers right now. I'm like, don't look at my feet right now, Alex. Oh. But I'm like, they make you feel a type of way, and they're so understated.
It's such a humble flex, though.
They're so humble, right? They don't. I want to see. Look, they're mad humble. They're like they don't got LV all over them and shit.
I didn't even.
I remember my friend was like, "Yo, I didn't even know." In Texas, was like, I didn't even know. He's like, you're doing something. And I was like, they just make me feel good.
And when you put them on, it make your feet glow a little different. Right? You feel like that shit day. And it's like, I had to realize that. I'm like, you get that feeling, but what's the downside? That feeling when the check gone every time. And I was working hard too.
Yeah.
I always had a job, but it was like, I had nothing to show for it of value, I'll say.
Yeah. So what was like the turnaround? Like, how did you start changing your mindset?
I was talking to a friend of mine. His name is Anthony, and he told me about. He was on a path with his wife where they were looking to make some changes so they could be up. They were at the time about 115,000 maybe in the hole.
Yeah.
So, we talked around that time and he told me what he was trying to do and I was on board. I'm like, I need a part of this. So
wait, what was he trying to do?
So a debt payoff challenge.
Oh.
A debt payoff challenge I joined. So
that's so much better than like a weight loss bullshit challenge. That's so much better.
I'm about to say, weight loss is good too. But they started a debt payoff challenge. So what they did, everybody entered. You had to put in your total amount of debt, how much you were looking to pay. Whoever had paid off the most debt in a year, you won the prize. And I think the entry was maybe like $50, but the prize was like $500.
Oh,
but the truth of it, there's no loser. It's not about the money. The prize.
Yeah.
So it was great. So when we first started, they had a chart that they updated monthly with how much people had paid. So every month people were, the first month everybody saw how much each other put and it was like, okay. But one person in particular threw a bunch of money at their loan that first week. So for me, I'm competitive. It spoke to my competitive nature. So I'm like, no, I'm gonna win this thing. So it made me, I started living scorched earth.
Yeah.
I figured out how to cut my expenses. Like at the time I had home phone, cable, internet package. I'm like, the home phone only telemarketers call.
Yeah, no one's using a home phone anymore.
I did love cable, but I had to ask myself, what was I watching on cable and could I watch it elsewhere without paying for it?
Yeah.
And easily I came to realize this is, yes, you can find the 5 things you watch.
Believe it or not. Yeah.
I cut the cable, just a bunch of expenses that I just weren't necessary. I really streamed it down. So that freed up a lot of money to be able to start to attack the debt I had. So month to month, it got competitive.
Yeah.
Competitive. Every penny I could find, every check I got, I was trying to hurl as much at it as possible.
What else did you cut? So you cut cable.
So I cut cable. I had a bunch of, you know what I had realized at the time? I had a bunch of, those $10 subscriptions to just sign up for this or like as an add-on. I had so many of those. I had like, Epix is added on to this. And I had Netflix and Hulu and Stars.
Like the commercial free and then, like Showtime on Hulu.
I had so many of those. I cut them down to like 2. I just had Hulu and Netflix. It was $15.
Oh, nice.
A big part of it was lifestyle. Like I used to, again, party and go out to the clubs a lot. I had to tell my friends, I'm like, look, I'm trying to pay off this debt. I'm trying to do something better. So, if y'all see me doing something different than what I'm telling you I'm trying to do, I want y'all to help hold me accountable. So, when they were hitting the clubs or going here and there, I had to tell them like, yo, I can't do that right now. I got different things to do. And it was tough.
What was the percentage of people that were on board with that as compared to not?
So it's funny because it's like they're on board, they're supported in theory, like when I tell them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to application, it was hard for them to swallow because it's like, yo, we going out, like it's only gonna be this much. And I'm like, look, $75 right now means more to me. Like
I remember talking to you on the phone and it really like opened my eyes to a lot of stuff because you were like, listen, there's a birthday dinner, you pay $30 for the Uber to get there. And then you're like splitting dinner with everybody. You end up dropping like $150 on somebody's dinner to go out. And then y'all are getting drinks after. And you're like, you can pick one of the things. Maybe don't go to the dinner and maybe meet up with people after. Or if they're going to get brunch the next day, go to that. But like, you don't need to do. And it tends to, man, it gets selfish. I'm like, yo, I get it's your birthday, but you're turning like 33. Like, come on now. Like, you've had enough of these.
And the thing is, it also, it made me realize, like, because even in the beginning, I'm like, all right, I'll limit it to birthday functions. And I'm like, you know how many birthdays?
I know, you got a lot of friends.
I love that it's always somebody's birthday. And that's the thing too. I start to realize how much I was used to showing my love in money.
Oh, 1,000%.
Like get the person a gift or I'm showing up here to spend this money. When it's like, I had to tell myself, I'm like, these people won't love you less or more because of that. And if they do,
they're the wrong people.
You got your answer. You got your answer, So that was a big one. Like when it was the time and I'm like, no, what do you do? You're not going out. I'm sitting in the house right now.
Yeah.
And, it made me change how I had fun. I started to invite people over more. I bought a bunch of board games, just things that we could interact a bunch. There's a liquor store across the street from where I am. So I tell people, just pull up, bring a bottle.
Yeah.
We can hang out in the house. You can still enjoy the company of your friends and have a social life without blowing the bank.
Yeah. And it's nice that like, hopefully, I mean, I know I'm on board with it, but hopefully you get enough people that are supportive of it and like understand you're like, even if it's 2 years.
Yeah.
We're going to be able to do shit after this. Like, just let me get, especially out of the hole, I think is the biggest part. And that's where I'm at right now. So I know you've been coaching me and like, it's just getting to that like step one. Like, just get out of that hole. And you had a lot of debt before, right? That you got yourself out of?
Yeah, it was about 50,000.
That's so crazy. Every time I tell people that, they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, he figured out. Like, did you get a book or did you like, what did you do?
So I enrolled, I bought a program. It was called Financial Peace.
Okay.
And I started taking the course. So the first thing it did kind of taught me a little bit about, just what I needed to have some type of stability because I had no idea. My parents taught me what they could about money, but they didn't know. They told me what they could, but they didn't know everything.
Yeah.
So for me, this course kind of put me online. It was like, okay, it gave me some accountability. It gave me a plan. And it also gave me, the big part is confidence that there was light at the end. Like life wouldn't be over.
I think that's the hardest part is being like, it seems so long, especially because you feel like you're missing out so much.
And you know what the funny thing is, what I had to tell myself, because so much of it is mental. I had to really tell myself, I'm like, nothing that you like doing right now will not be here.
Yeah. And then COVID hit. No, I'm joking.
You know what? It's funny because I was like, but you know what? That's so funny you mentioned that because then COVID hit, right?
Right.
So for real, I'm like, I did all this sacrifice. And mind you, I literally became debt free that January.
Yeah, I remember.
You know what I'm saying? So in my mind, I'm like, it's time to go on a trip. I had a trip to Jamaica planned. I was ready to turn loose. And then COVID hit. But you know what the funny thing is? A little piece of me felt like, damn, I'm going to miss out. But then also, I lost my job. I lost my job, right?
Yep.
At the end of March. So I was happy I was out of debt.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? How they hated on you?
Yeah. So, they mentioned in letting me go that it was, they felt like a conflict of interest, I guess, in promoting their interests and promoting, my business at the time, which was I wanted to start with financial coaching.
Yeah.
So, what I said is, everything happens for a reason. You know what I mean? I felt like I had done what I could do there, and it ended up being a blessing.
Absolutely. It's funny because that timeline, like you lost your job. We were both working for the same pharmaceutical company for a while. I moved to Texas. You're in New York. I got let go from my job in Texas. And a week later, you got hit with this bullshit and it's funny because like you weren't changing around your timeline or your schedule with your day job. Like just certain people that want you to work for them just don't want you to think outside the box. So like you work for me, period.
You can be happy here.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, what if I want to do stuff outside? All right, whatever.
You're like, no, cool.
But it was a blessing in that scenario because, as I had paid off my my debt, the first thing I did was build a little emergency fund. So when I did lose my job, I was able to pay out a few months of rent and buy myself some time to be like, all right, cool. At least you got 3 months to figure out, look for something else, just get it together. So it still ended up being a blessing, even when COVID hit. There was no downside.
Oh, absolutely. And then, I mean, with that, because I remember I was in Texas and I was talking to you on the phone all the time and you were like, this is a perfect time to be saving. No one's bugging you to do anything. This is a perfect time to be saving. Like a lot of people, it's like if you didn't come out on top, what were you doing?
It's not easy, but we got to seize the opportunity, seize the moment. I felt like for me, looking forward, I could see a light at the end of the tunnel, but I just really had to try to change my mentality to really be able to go after it. Like the motivation is the tough part. So for me, a big part of it was accountability partners. I told my mother what I was trying to do. I told a few close friends and they support, they push through.
Yeah, because it's such a positive thing to do.
Yeah. But it's not easy. But at the same time, whoever didn't really support, some people are like, yo, this is stupid. Like, why would you pay off all this money when you could be? I'm like, all right, cool. What I told myself in my head, I'm like, whoever doesn't believe in it, they'll clap at the end because the results are inevitable.
Such a good way to
I'm like,
put
they'll
it.
clap at the end.
Yeah.
And if they
for
don't,
anything,
and if they don't, that's cool too. But everybody can't see your vision. Everybody don't see your dream.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it too. To be financially literate and to apply it by nature, it makes you a unicorn nowadays.
Oh yeah.
So it's almost like for so many reasons, you got to get used to kind of doing something that the bulk of people around you are not doing or don't care about.
Absolutely. Because that's what, I mean, even it's been such a blessing to have you coach me and like have you like translate all of this education that you gave yourself to me. Because like I said, my parents always said pay down the credit cards. I've never heard my parents once in their life say pay off their credit cards. And so I grew up with that mentality. Like they were like, they're blue collar town. My dad put himself through, he got his 4-year degree when I was a kid. And then now he's got his master's. Like while I was in college, he went to college. And so it was like, I watched him work, but he still never had the mentality of like, having wealthy people around him or having financially literate people around him. He just, so they always said, we would go on vacations, like we would go to Disney World when I was a kid, which I'm very grateful for. But, it gave me that mentality of like, oh, you just pay it down. It's just a monthly bill. And you're like, I'm losing so much money. Because I remember you showing me, how much you lose. And then even the last credit card I had, I was like, they're charging me $80 a month just to have this credit card. Just to have a balance on it.
Just to I'm going to charge you $80 for the right to continue to owe me money.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah.
And you tell your friends, like I've told my friends now, I'm like, I'm working on paying off my debt because like now the world's opening back up and they're like, oh, we got to go on a vacation and we got to go to Vegas. We got to go to Mexico. And I'm like, listen, like just give me a year. Like give me like another year and I'll get out of that. Because then, I mean, the next step, which you've been good at is having your money work for you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is you have to realize anything you love and you want to do right now, it'll be there when you have some money to go do it. It'll still be there. But after paying off debt, my next task was to build an emergency fund. I recommend that to everybody. And what it does is put a buffer between you and poverty. Some money to really say to yourself, hey, if anything happens, I have at least 3 to 6 months of my expenses set to the side to be able to cover that time so I can generate some more. Because if you really think about it, if you're heavily in debt and you're behind on rent simultaneously, you're this close to being outside on the street.
You're so close.
You're this close.
Yeah.
It's not that far.
And, you know, it's like somebody like yourself that was blessed enough to have parents that you could ask for the time. A lot of people don't have that.
Do not have a support system, especially if you don't have a support system. It's a blessing if you have people you can turn to in your time of need. But here's the thing, even the people that you will turn to in your time of need, for them, they, of course, want to help you and look to help you. But sometimes they might feel a way not knowing if they're giving an alcoholic a drink or putting a Band-Aid on your wound.
Yep.
You know, and it's a thing for them too. But I definitely, as far as making my money work for me, you know, when I paid off my debt, I was definitely able to be a lot more aggressive with investing because I wasn't paying out the car note and paying out a credit card now. If I had $200 or $300 extra a month, I could say, hey, let me up my 401k percentage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that money coming out of the check, it's like I didn't notice because I was used to spending it. It's just now, where does it go? I get to hang on to it.
That's such a good way of looking at it. So for some people, because I'm sure, and I know like when you first told me this about like your 3-month fund of creating that buffer, I know there's a lot of people right now, especially with COVID, they're like, fuck that. I don't even have, you know, like $200 extra. You know, there's a lot of people that I know that paid off credit cards. Then COVID happened. They lost their situation. And now all those credit cards are back up. Where would you tell them to start?
I would say the first thing would be I would make a list of everything I'm spending money on and figure out what's essential and what's not essential.
Gotcha.
Because just because you have an emergency fund doesn't mean you upkeep the same lifestyle you had when you were working. No, it might be time to turn down the lifestyle. All of this is an essential. So figure that out first. Figure out what's essential. And then when you figure out what's non-essential, it got to go. It's going to require sacrifice. There's no easy way about it. I don't sell easy. I don't sell that pill. I sell possible.
That's true, because with anything, if it's like an easy, quick fix, you're like, that shit's coming right back.
Chances off it's easy is not going to work. No. And you respect things different when you had to put in a lot of work to achieve it or accomplish. You respect it different. So I would say, yeah, definitely. I'd say you have to ask yourself. So look at what you're spending to figure out essentials, non-essentials, lifestyle. I think you have to be able to be honest with yourself and say, what's my drug of choice per se? Like, do I like to go out? What do you like to spend? What's your vice?
Yeah.
When you figure out your vice, you know, whatever eats up most of your money, then you got to think about how to make adjustments with that. And it's not, you know, necessarily optional at that point. You're in a hole. So you got to figure out what adjustments you got to make. I would encourage everybody to go on Netflix and check out Minimalism. It's a little doc I watched about living with less, and it was huge for me.
Really?
It was huge. It was huge. It was huge. It really talked about what your life could be like living with less. The average American has like 300,000 items that they're in possession of. Items.
Crazy.
And you have to ask yourself, how many of them do I use? How many of these items do I utilize? How many of these items add value? And how much is just crap I have trouble letting go of?
Yeah, that's so true. Because you meet people that are like hoarders, or they're like, I might use this at some point, or I have like an emotional attachment to something. And you're like, take a picture of it or something. Like, you're going to have those memories. Yeah. Like, that thing isn't doing anything for you but taking up space.
Yeah. Another thing I would recommend, if you have items you can still take back and get a refund, do that.
True.
Take it back. That's an easy way to make money. Yeah. Take it back to the store.
That's fair.
The selling economy, as far as the eBays, the Poshmarks, the Grails, I became a fan and started utilizing them. If you have items in your house that are of value and they're sitting in your house doing nothing, sell them.
Yeah,
that could be the money you use to pay some of your bills.
Okay.
You know, return it to the store would be, you know, ideal. But if the store won't take it back, there's somebody else who's looking to make a horrible decision out there.
That's so true. You're like, somebody else ain't learned that. Yeah, you're like, have them call me up.
There are way more people looking to make terrible financial decisions than make good ones.
Funny. What was the hardest thing for you to part with?
That car.
Yeah, I'll bet.
That car. Bet. When I listed it online, as soon as I listed it, because it wasn't a super special color combo. There's just not a lot of them. It's just black on black. You know what I mean? And it was the 2-door, and there just wasn't a lot in the area. You know, like on Auto Trader, they're all over the country.
Absolutely.
In New York, in the area at the time, there weren't many for sale with that kind of mileage. So as soon as I put it up, people contacting me, and I'm almost like, man.
Oh, you're like, I don't want to talk to you.
This dude calls me up. And he's like, man, I got cash. I want to see the car. I want to check it out. And I so begrudgingly set up the appointment. But I showed it to him. He looks around the car. He's touching this. I'm like,
you're like, no.
You trying to, in front of me? In front of me?
Oh, you're like, damn.
Yeah, so, and yeah, it was actually for his sister. He just kind of wanted to check it out so she doesn't, you know, she figured that she might get taken advantage of. When for me, it was more like, yo, let me get rid of this thing so I could pay off the note and have it behind me. But I just didn't want to let it go. So when the day came, we finally took it. They told me they wanted it. We took it, got an inspection, and they handed over the cash. They put the cash in my hand, and it was maybe $8,000 or $9,000 that I got for the value of the car at that time.
They give you literal cash?
Yeah, cash in my hand. And, you know, on one hand, I was so happy to have the cash, but I had to hand the keys over. No, you know what's the point? She dropped me home. It's a funny thing.
Oh, that hurt.
Because the Infinity dealer was in Queens. So I'm like, you drop me home, man. I live in Harlem. Like,
it'd be so much worse if she dropped you off at the train, though.
Yeah, you know, oh, man.
She just brought you right to the train.
I'd have flattened one of the tires.
Right.
Like, nah.
She's like, this is your new life.
Nah, but it was such a positive step forward. I got rid of a debt for a car I didn't need, and you know, but just letting it go, it was hard at first because especially I had got known for it at that point, like, you know.
Yeah, how hard is that when you're holding like $9,000 not to be like, well, maybe I'll just buy a little something.
It wasn't as hard as I thought it was gonna be because by that point I was motivated to make changes. So, you know, like. A year prior to that, if I'd have got 9,000 cash in my hand, what would I have done? This car needs some new wheels. I might need to put a stereo in here. Maybe a good wax on the whole body, you know, a little moisturization on the body of the car.
Candy paint.
Give it that shine. You know, the stupidness in hindsight. But, you know, it felt cool at the time. You know what I mean?
It really is crazy. Like we were saying, you own one of those things and you're like, this gives me confidence and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And it's like, it's societal. Like it's one of those things that like psychologically it's been like driven into you and everybody else. Man. We're all watching the music videos. We're all on Instagram. It's all like that was one selling you the dream.
That was one of the biggest things I had to learn how to break. So now it's like, but back then, like when people would, let's say they see me flying by or whatever, yo, I was whatever, you know, I used to let people's compliments pump me up.
Yeah.
And if they disapproved, I would be down like, oh, you know, what can I do? So what I had to do was I had to kind of kill both of them and bring it to an equilibrium. So now it's like when people give me a compliment, I take it. I accept, oh, thanks. But I don't let that be the reason I feel good about something. Because if you rely on that, if people stop pumping you up, are you still going to pump yourself up?
That's so true. It's so true. Because and especially too, there are certain people that you don't know that well, and then they gas you up about something like that, and you're like, that's where your values lie. Yeah. Because you're like, if I don't have this, like, do you still fuck with me? Like, is it?
And let alone, why do I care what you think about this?
Yeah.
That's what it really lets you know. I care a lot what y'all think. Whereas now I care so much less.
Yeah.
And a little piece of that became, as I started to learn more, I understood I only see this much of what people have going on. I don't feel the need to impress anybody. You know, I still do certain things because again, they make me feel good. But if nobody was to give me a compliment or something, it's like, all right, it's
and
cool.
It's funny. I wonder if that like comes with age too. Because I feel like in your 30s too, you figure out like more about who you are. Yeah. And it's like, or if it's like about a bunch of experience, or you're just like, I'm just cool with who I am.
Yeah.
Because Instagram's a mind fuck, huh? Like, especially it's when you know your friends too, and then you see certain things like they'll post something about a relationship, and you're like, I know y'all fight all the time, or they'll tell you face to face. They'll be like, we got into a fight, so I posted that, and you're like, you know, everybody else that doesn't know you that well is like feeling bad about their relationship right now.
Let's talk about that. Even when I started paying off my debts and I really got in a different mind frame, one of the first things I did, I went through my email inbox. Every place that I love to shop, unsubscribed from the email list.
Ooh,
went on Instagram, all the pages that I love to follow, that I check up on, what's next, who can take my money, I unfollowed them. And what that didn't change me from that. What it did is it really, I know I love these things, but I don't need to see them every day because every day ain't the time for it, you know? So it changed it in my life. This is what it changed it from you guys pushing it in front of my face to when I want it, I'll go look for it.
That's such a better mindset. And it's crazy with those targeted ads now too, right? Because I did notice that. I mean, when I was a kid, I worked at Abercrombie when I was in college and we got paid jack shit. But you were in the store all day and you were staring at the shit all day for like 6 hours.
And they pumping that Abercrombie spray.
Yeah. And you're like, and I'm watching, you know, somebody's wearing this and I'm going to be here and I'm staring at this shirt all day. And I'm like, if I wasn't in the store, I wouldn't buy this. I'm like, I'm just looking at it all day. So now it's just like in my head. It's so crazy.
It's just constant offers. It's like Instagram, people like, hey, you want this? No? You want this? You want this? And then they figure out how to become better at knowing what you like to put it in front of you. Whereas my thing is like, look, in normal life before Instagram, I wouldn't go to the mall every day.
Yeah.
So why now am I shopping every day? When you push something in front of my face, you're forcing me to shop every day.
It's so, I know, because you look at that phone every day and they're always like, how about this? What about this?
When I stopped seeing as much of the ads because of those two things, it literally made me want less. I did not see the items as much. And then it started to become distant, and then it started to become unfamiliar. That's when I started to win.
That's good. Yeah,
when
that's what I really need to work on.
Unfamiliar, you know?
It's tough with doing comedy. I notice I'm on my phone all the time now, and it's such a time suck. Because I'm booking gigs through Instagram. I'm like networking through it, and I'm like, I'm looking at Instagram way too much. Like, and I'm like, I've noticed how it mentally like fucks with me too.
You get to curate your Instagram.
Yeah, it's like I just gotta like talk to all these like bookers. I gotta like look all over the country to find like different places to go, and like then it's just I'm just on it too much because I'm like I'm getting ads. I'm like I need to set aside a time, but like the same thing with like what we were talking about with like finances. Like people are so fraudulent on Instagram.
It's cap. Instagram is people's Sports Center top 10 highlights
all the time.
People don't show them. They don't show themselves folding clothes. They don't show themselves doing the whack parts of life. It's people's highlight reel.
Yeah.
You can't compare your whole real life to somebody else's highlight reel.
Oh, especially like, and it's crazy too, because I'm like looking at people that I'm like, oh, you're going on vacation all the time. Your whole timeline is indifferent. And then I'm like, but if you talk to them, it's like close friends that I've had, and like a couple that I know that have, you know, they started their own business and stuff like that. They're the most in-depth people I know. And I'm like, oh, you guys have people that don't know you well think that like you're crushing it, and then they're comparing their like financial situation that like, oh, I want that, so I got to spend the money. It's so toxic. It's so bad. But yeah, it's crazy too, because I always remember growing up like them always showing like what Bill Gates was wearing.
Oh man, with the khakis and the shirt. See, I used to hate that. Look, he's the richest man in the room, not one Gucci belt. I'm like, all right.
You're like, got it.
Come on, man. I'm sure he's in electronics. He probably lives in a Millennium Falcon or something. Right? Like, who knows what? Come on, man.
It's so funny because they were showing pictures recently. If you recently Google Bill Gates, because he's broken up with his wife, he's got like fly sneakers on.
For real?
Yeah.
Wait, what they show him wearing?
Yeah, I don't know which ones they were.
Anything but the Bill Gates special boat shoes is good bread.
He's got a whole different style now. It's so funny.
The meme I keep seeing pop up is Jeff Bezos next to Bill Gates. It's like, if these two can't satisfy their woman, how about...
For real. You're like, that's the dream. I remember when my gay friends was like, yo, I just want to be like a white bitch that divorced well on the Upper East Side.
Man, listen,
like
me too.
Right?
Me
like
too.
That's I just want to divorce well. Like It's so crazy. But talking about that, like I always think about now, I mean, I'm in my 30s. I'm like, at this point, like I've waited so long to like settle down with somebody. Like finances is a piece of it. And people will say that it sounds like, oh, you sound like a gold digger. And I'm like, it's not that at all. I'm like, it's take care of. Yeah.
It's essential.
If I take care of like my finances and then I meet a dude and he's like, oh, I'm 45 grand in debt. I'm like, no, thank you. Because I'm taking on half of that.
I think the biggest piece when it comes to finances, when it comes to a relationship, is not necessarily where the person stands when you meet them, it's where they're looking to go.
That's fair. Yeah.
Are you meeting somebody that they could tell you like, hey, I'm 45 in the hole, but guess what I'm doing to change that? I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. You could build with
You're
that.
like, let me stick up for this man that doesn't exist.
No, you know what it is? Because that's the huge part. There's that part. And then there's me as somebody 45 in the hole. That's like, what? I'm chilling.
Yeah, right.
I think I can hit 60 in the hole by next year. If I keep on keeping on, I think I can get there. And it's like, I was trying to, I don't know, save somebody. Like, save.
You're like, let's go on vacation. What are you talking about? Let's go to Vegas. Put on black.
And it's hard because I'll say this. I know it's affected me in terms of relationships for some time because as a man, you know, I feel like I let, you know, we always have these imaginary rules. No one specifically told us, but we know them up here.
Yeah.
As a guy, I just figured, all right, as a guy, women are going to expect you to buy things for them.
Hell yeah,
You got to be the supplier. You got to, you know.
Provider, yeah.
And for me, it kind of turned me off to wanting to date seriously because this was my thought process. I'm trying to get on my feet.
You're like, I'm not trying to provide for you.
And not only that, you going to want to make people that don't have jobs, kids, you're going to want to make people that don't have jobs and that are going to require money.
Yeah.
So how's this supposed
You're
to
like,
work?
I'm trying to feed me.
I want to feed me so I can help feed us so we can talk about that, you know? And that was a huge part of the mentality that I had. And I realized, you know, when I was looking for a partner, I'm like, I wasn't going to, me and a gimme girl wasn't going to work. I was going to want to, the only how I was going to work if I found a partner, somebody that was like on the same page, not rich, not poor, but just wanted to be doing better. I said, if I can find somebody that wants to do better.
Yeah, isn't that crazy how your priorities changed in your 30s too? You're like, I want a partner. I don't want like this like hot little side piece thing. I want like somebody that's like gonna grow with me rather than like, hey, look at her. Yeah. Like,
because at that point, the partner would have been like an accessory, like the car. Like,
yeah,
these
absolutely.
things make me look like. And mind you, that's a party thing. Picture yourself in this dream. We having a convertible with your whoever next to you, just owning the world, right? And I'm like, no, man, you gotta find somebody that you can help build to that with, you know? So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's where a lot of people, especially in New York City, a lot of people in New York City are in situations with people because rent is too damn high.
Oh, it's crazy. Like oh my God, when I moved here with somebody and it wasn't because like we were like super in love. It was because like, oh, you get like, it's either you get Craigslist roommates or you're with the person that you're going to see every day all the time anyways. So you're like, oh. And then the second guy I lived with, we only dated for like 3 months. And then he was like, yeah, just move in with me. You got the spot. It was only $600 a month because it was rent controlled. You're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, it wasn't like we were holding hands looking around at apartments. It was like, it was a situation.
It comes into play. It comes into play. And especially a place like New York, like you got to be able to make enough money to live by yourself. That's not a standard, a norm, or just regular.
No, it's not.
In New York City, you gotta grind for that. That could cost you, you know.
Too much money for what I'm paying for my closet right now.
And money is definitely one of the number one arguments people have in relationships. And I think a big part of that is people struggle with their financial insecurity.
Yeah.
To be able to open up and be transparent with their partner.
That's fair.
You know,
how do you feel about all the Bitcoin stuff? Like, say you meet somebody and they're like, hey, they're like a Bitcoin baller.
So you know what it is? I would try to hear somebody's thought process behind Bitcoin. Like, are they looking at this like the casino? Are they talking about it in terms of like, oh, you know, I just want to learn a little bit about it, maybe dip my toes in the water? Their approach would say more than the individual thing. That's because there'll always be another thing. Every year there'll be a thing. But what's your thought process? What's your approach? How do you look at this? That's what I'm checking out. Because if it's Bitcoin and it doesn't work out, it's not like necessarily, you know, but it could be like, well, I saw how you approached it and you failed. I could be next to you and approach stuff with you because I see how you do it, you know? But if they're just like, oh, we're going to... and shake the dice and roll and see what I'm like. All right, look, I can't move like that. I need some stability. We change as we get older. We want to be stable more than we did 10 years ago. And 10 years from now, we don't want to be stable too. So
absolutely. Well, if you had somebody that had a gambling problem.
I do have a client that has a gambling problem.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you go about that? Did they go to like meetings or anything?
I'll tell you, being a financial coach is like part counselor, part.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of psychological stuff that goes into finances for sure.
It's the truth about it. And with him, what I do is I definitely try to make sure, I didn't try to make him go cold turkey. We're going to cut this thing off. But I said, all right, these are what you have to pay for every month. I tried to allocate a gambling budget.
Okay.
Which was a small portion of what he was used to spending on gambling. You know what I mean?
So how's he been with it?
Good so far. I mean, and that's the thing. I don't have fiduciary responsibility. I don't get to look into his accounts.
That's fair.
I go off what he tells me. So, we have this to address. I'm like, hey, as long as we get this addressed this month and this addressed this month, these are important. Take a little bit. Enjoy yourself. But it's my goal to move him towards not gambling with his money. Yeah. But at the same time, that's his vice. Some people would take the same $200-300 and blow it frivolously doing something else. Yeah. So I leave that room. He's a grown adult. He works. He's allowed to do what he wants. But if you're calling me, asking me for help, that's
such a bigger issue of like, what drove him to do that. That's such a like psychological thing.
It's a part of the get rich quick mentality.
Absolutely.
Nobody want to do the long, hard, difficult road.
With anything.
It's just the quick fix. The gambling is hey, I can spend this and make that. If I jump in at this price, it'll jump to that price.
It's so funny, yeah. Because with the whole, like, you're saying, like, the quick fix, it never works. Like, you see that with weight loss. You see that, like, even in right now, like, being in entertainment, I've met a lot of people that just want to make networking and, like, and I'm like, what are you going to do? You're going to get to the top and bomb. Like, if you're in comedy, I'm like, you're going to network your way into, like, a bigger stage.
It don't work like that.
And I'm like, no. You got to work on whatever it is to have something to show for it.
Yeah, you want to show yourself.
Yeah,
you want to show yourself. A lot of the lessons are in the process. Lessons are in the process. We just want the result. But it's like, if you want the lessons, which will yield the result, it's in the process.
Absolutely.
It's in the process.
So you're saying about things people can do to get started now. I know you're saying cut out that lifestyle.
I give people 4 tidbits that you can take with you that you can start doing right now. So one is you have to track your net worth. Not tracking your net worth is like someone asking you, how did the basketball game go last night? And you go, I don't know. It's like you have to keep score. How can you track your progress if you don't know your starting point? So you can download like an app like Mint. You go on Mint and you can plug in all your accounts and it'll give you your net worth. And the beauty of that is you see your starting point.
Yeah, that shit hurts. I use Truebill and it tells me, it's like, here's all your bills together and here's what you got in the bank. And you're like, that shit's red.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you face it and it hurts, good. Yeah. Because you got to peel that Band-Aid off and be honest with yourself at some point. So I'll say that's one. Know your net worth. Second one, build an emergency fund. An emergency fund will turn an emergency into an inconvenience. Having some money set to the side. The average American does not have $400 set to the side in case of something.
Yep.
So you got to think about what that could mean. Like there's so many people sitting in jail because they don't have bail money. This could be money for medicine. I don't know. $400.
Anything. Like your dog is sick or something. Like
anything. So you need to go see a parent.
That's fair. There's just anything.
Yeah.
You got a pipe burst when all that shit happened in Texas. People were like, what happened? Like when everything froze over, like they were not prepared for that. Mm-hmm. That's money for that.
Mm-hmm. So I'd recommend that. Build an emergency fund. Budget. Every month, you got to sit down. You got to write down all the money that you have to spend. Rent, your 4 walls, your rent, utilities, transportation, and let's say clothing. Know those costs. Put that money to the side first. Now, whatever's left, you got to attack your bills, whatever debts you have. But making a budget will make sure that you have money for everything you need. Without a budget, how do you know you have money for everything you need?
Oh, sure. I'm so bad at that.
And I say a final tidbit, an easy way to keep money in your pocket, pay off your credit cards. Credit card interest, if you check your statement, you're probably dealing with between 13 and 25%.
Yeah, that shit's rough. That's why. So Alex has been my financial coach for, the past 2 years now. And it's been hard. It's not shit that I like to do So I've paid off. Now I'm paid off 2 credit cards. I have 3. I'm working on that 3rd one.
Yeah.
But it's just like, because we work together now at our day job and we'll get hit with a bonus every once in a while. And I'm like, ooh, because I was like, I want to buy another pair of shoes. And then I looked at, because I didn't even think of like my APR. I didn't think of looking at that bill. Then I was looking, I was like, I just paid off a huge chunk. And it was something like $2,000 left. Mm-hmm. And I was going to pay off $1,000. And I was going to buy some shoes or sunglasses or some shit. And I looked at the bill and I was like, wait, they're charging me $87 a month. Mm. And I was like, wait, how do I get rid of that? And you were like, if you pay off the whole statement. Because I was willing to do that for another 3 months. And I was like, wait, that's $240 of nothing. Of just paying every month.
You don't get an item. You don't get a prize.
You ain't getting shit for that. You ain't even getting a thank you.
For the credit card, you got to understand how amazing of a deal it is for the credit card company. I'm going to let you borrow your own money, essentially, because you're responsible for it. It's yours. People like to look at it as, oh, it's other people. No, you are responsible for it.
Yeah.
So I don't. But I'm going to let you borrow your own money and charge you more of your own money to do that. Credit cards companies, they don't have a product. They don't have a t-shirt. There's no, Visa ever sent you a t-shirt? Nothing.
No, the project is that we're not disciplined with money.
Yeah.
That's how they're making money.
Yeah. So pay off your credit cards. It's an easy way to keep more of your paycheck in your pocket. If you're not getting hit month to month with interest on a giant balance, that's literally cash you could be using to do anything you wanted to. And
yeah, that was the big thing that hit me because I was like, maybe I'll buy a pair of sunglasses and then the next time we get a bonus, I'll pay the rest of it off. And then I looked at it and I was like, if I wait 3 months, that's $240. That's as much as the sunglasses cost. Like, that's stupid. That's just dumb.
Anything you could buy.
But I would never think of it that way unless I talked to you. That's why I wanted to do this, because I think what you're doing is very positive for especially people our age that haven't learned this.
I appreciate that. Anything you could buy with a credit card, you can save up and buy in cash. It's saving, paying off debt and saving and investing is literally the same process.
Paying things in cash hurts. That's a big lesson. It's so good.
It should.
Yeah.
And it should. It should.
It's such a better way of going about things. But then you're like, oh, that really came out of my bank account, huh? Like, you watch that number go down, you're like, oh, that's where I'm at.
We're trying to delay the pain. The thing is to address the pain and get used to dealing with it up front.
Yeah.
You know, you pay that in cash. And because you know what it does when you pay it in cash? It makes you, first, you have to, do I really want this? Because I have to feel the pain now. And sometimes the answer is yes. You'll lay the money down, you get the item, and you'll feel like this was a good thing that just happened. But if you have to lay the money down, you don't like the item that much, you're more likely to put it back. You know, that's to your benefit.
Super fair. I know, because that's how I used to be. It's funny, you gave me a candle the other day because you found those candles for sale. That used to be my thing. When I lived on the Upper West Side, there was a bookstore that had these like really nice candles. I sound like a bitch in my 30s right now. And they were $40. And I was like, you're literally burning it. It's literally... I'm not going to have that shit in 2 weeks.
Man, I had to learn how to, you'd be surprised how often people, like for instance, something like candles, like I love cheap candles. I can't spend a lot of money on candles. I just hate it. You'd be surprised how often I get cheap candles and somebody look at it, $6. And I'm like, I'm doing all right. And I feel comfortable spending $6. I meet people that's...
It's the same ambiance.
And they looking at me crazy because I'm trying to be conscious. But I'm like, you wilding out with your money. And I didn't understand it. But you definitely got to develop your own thick skin. I'll tell you that, Gina. Develop your own thick skin and try your best not to, you know?
Yeah. What are some like hacks you've found? Or like, have you found any like, you know, there's these apps that give you like rewards back, or there's like, where do you save money?
So the funny thing is I love how you phrase that question, apps and rewards. I try to stay away from things that incentivize me to spend more.
That's fair. That's super fair.
You never find anything that's like gives you incentive to not spend money or incentive to save. Yeah. Because no matter how, like we think of saving as not spending as much money as we would have, when it's like, no. Let's address not buying the item.
So funny. You know I literally got a bracelet one time on Instagram because they were like, it's free, you just pay for shipping. And I'm like, I'm saving money on this. And I'm like, I don't even want that bracelet. It was so stupid. It was a solar system, like beads, where like the beads were supposed to be like, one looks like Jupiter and like shit like that. You see me wearing it? Yo, it costs It costs like $12 for the shipping. It shows up. It's got like 11 beads on it that are just random colors. I'm like, these aren't even like the universe. Somebody in China was just laughing at me.
That bracelet was 25 cents, and they paid $1.25 to ship it.
I was like, damn, I should do this shit.
Man, it's and give yourself a budget. I like, because even within my budget, there's a portion allocated for fun. This is money that by the end of the month it shouldn't be here, and I need to have some sort of story to back it. So it's not. And again, this is not a no plan. You know what I mean?
No, I like how you do that, because that's what a lot of like. I remember I had a nutrition coach for a while, and she was telling me about a client that she was like, "This woman's thing is ice cream," and she was like, if she can do 6 days of like working out, like lifting 3 days a week, and she eats clean and she does like her counting her like macros essentially, she's like, she can fit ice cream into those macros. She can do that once a week. Like, I'm not going to bother her about that. And as long as you're giving like 90% effort, you know, and you got to, because you're going to go nuts if you're like 100% disciplined.
It's tough. It's not easy. The accountability and self-discipline is if you can master those, you can master anything. So, you know, I would just encourage people to just try to, you know, keep tabs on yourself. We hate a lot of time when other people hold us accountable, but it's difficult to hold yourself accountable sometimes, you know? It's hard.
So that light at the end of the tunnel, like getting your money to work for you. Tell us more about that.
It was so...
like, what could it mean if you paid off your credit cards and you save your money? Because it's like there's that next step of getting your money to work for you. Like you said, you invest more in your 401k. Like, what does that light look like to make it like people would get more motivated to do these things?
It's amazing because, I mean, just because you don't physically work for money doesn't mean that you can't be making money the same way. So, you know, for me, I made about, I would say in the last maybe 6-7 months, just in the market, I made about 30,000.
What?
And that's literally just through buy and hold. I didn't do anything crazy, but I had the opportunity when I lost my job last year and I left, I had the opportunity to roll over a 401k and to start a new 401k with a company. So what I did, I put everything I had, not everything I had, no, as far as retirement savings, I put it in an IRA, an individual retirement account. It's like a 401k, except you get to choose from a lot more options of what you want to invest in. That's the big thing about it. So in my 401k, I maybe had 8 to 10 options. In the IRA, I had at least 50 or 60. So I sifted through and I checked 2 things on all the ones I picked. I checked to see how much was their expense ratio. Anything below 1% is usually reasonable. And the second thing I checked for was its track record over the course of 10 years. They'll tell you right there on the summary what.
So that expense ratio, can you explain that to people? So
expense ratio is a percentage of what you own of that stock. They'll charge you every year to manage it.
Oh, okay.
So if it could be 0.5, it could be 1. Anything past 1 is usually expensive, but the lower it is, the better.
Gotcha.
And that's typically on like a mutual fund, something like that, where they invest in a ton of companies and you're almost paying to be a part of it being actively managed by someone who you pray knows what they're doing.
Gotcha.
But it's worked out so far. I invested the money and it's made 30,000 over the course of the last 6-7 months. And it's like my first year working out of college, I made 20 grand, getting up every day, blood, sweat, and tears. And it's like now it's, you know, less than a year I've made that, not lifting a physical finger. But it goes to show you that over time, that money that you're using to pay off debt, when you're done with that, that could be money you're putting into the market. That could be money that starts working for you, you know? It's very difficult to pay off debt and invest at the same exact moment.
I think that's a big thing that like people get ahead of themselves, that they're like, why am I doing this? And you're like, it's the payoff.
It's the payoff. It's a payoff. Debt grows fast.
Yeah.
Debt goes fast. And investments grow relatively fast as well. So it's like, you know, I just told myself I didn't want to have that debt continue to pull me down faster than the investments could pull me up. So I got rid of the liabilities and focused on the assets.
That's such a good way of thinking about it, because that debt does grow super fast. Because if I'm thinking about 80, you know, that's 80 times 10, that's $800 a year I was paying.
Listen.
And I'm like, and I'm already trying to like get out of there. And then, but if you're right, if you're at 0 and then you put it in the market, like I know I'm not too literate with like a 401k and HSA and all that stuff, and that's something that people can learn from you. That it does, like, you start looking at that when you're, you know, lucky enough to be in a professional company that gives you a 401k that matches, and you're like, wait a second, if I sit and learn about this is how people get wealthy. You're like, this is how, you're like, they're not even doing anything, and it's growing as opposed to like drowning you.
Yeah, and even if you don't have, even if your company doesn't offer a 401k, you can always get your own individual retirement account, and you can put up to $6,000 in there every year. The same way a 401k you can contribute more. It's up to $19,500. But if your company doesn't offer that for you and you want to invest for retirement, get an IRA. You can put $6,000 in there pre-tax, the same way, just like a 401k.
So, okay. So this is why everybody should try to find Alex, because you've been super helpful for me over the past 2 years. Like, even these things, you know, like you get this huge booklet when you get hired at a company, or like there's these things offered to you, even if they're not offered through your company, that can help you out. And you just need to be literate in them. And they're not something that you learn in school. And if you're not from a wealthy family, they're not going to be thrown at you, or these words aren't going to be, you know, no one's explaining your HSA and what you should do to it when you're younger. And when you get hired, you know, especially like I said, from a more blue collar town, no one was like, so when you do get that job, like there's nobody. My parents even would always say, like, take out more school loans, they'll never hurt you. And I'm like, they'll hurt you a lot. They'll hurt you a lot. So with all of those things, I think you're very literate and you have a lot to teach people. What's one thing you want to leave people with? And then tell us where we can find you.
Okay. So I think a big takeaway is, you know, overall, this thing revolves around, see if you can lower your expenses and simultaneously raise your income. If you can do those things, you'll create a gap that you can use to start putting yourself in the position you want to be. So see if you can lower your expenses and raise your income simultaneously. So lowering your expenses typically requires some sacrifices, and raising your income typically requires some sacrifices. See if you can make those sacrifices will pay off. And if you want to get in contact with me, you can reach me on Instagram at AlexFinanceNYC. My website is alexfinancenyc.com. Twitter, AlexFinanceNYC. And you can even call my phone. I'll give you my phone number right now. It's a phone in my pocket. I want to be that accessible that you can reach out to me if you're not comfortable or you want a little more personal. 646-996-6198. You can reach out to me. So,
Word. All right. Well, I'm Gina Hyena. This is Alex Finance.
Yeah.
This has been Gina Got Friends. And what we say at the end here is that everybody eats.
Everybody eats.
Everybody eats.
Everybody eats.
Yeah, hell
like
yeah.
That.
Right?
Like
Thank you.
No problem.
Word.